The 37th America's Cup will go down as one of the most action-packed cup cycles in the history of the event. But it'll also be noted for bringing around 100 female and young sailors into the cup world. In more than 170 years, this has never happened before, at least not on this scale. On top of this, in preparation for the Women and Youth America's Cup events, this new generation of high-performance sailors demonstrated at some of the preliminary events and in training how they could compete head-to-head with the main teams and their more experienced sailors. It was an eye-opener for all. So when it came to the main event, the Unicredit Youth America's Cup and the Puig Women's America's Cups, these are among the standout moments. In both cases, the racing was close, intense, and at times extremely challenging, thanks to some punchy conditions. And while the battles to win the trophies were hard fought, the real winner was the sport that has seen a big step forward in two key areas: women and youth. This was the third time that a Youth America's Cup series has been run. The first was in San Francisco in 2013, using the AC-45 Cats. This time there were some big changes. First, the boat, an AC-40. The second was how the event would be run. This time around, the 12-boat fleets for both Youth and Women America's Cups were split into two groups of 6 apiece. Group A included teams from the current America's Cup campaigns. Group B were those that were from outside a cup team. After a series of qualifying rounds, the top 3 from each group would race in a semi-final series, from which the top 2 would then go on to the match race final. First up in the Unicredit Youth America's Cup was Group B, where the Swedish youth team dominated the qualifiers in this group, followed by the Spanish and the Australians. In Group A, the battle to be top dog was between Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli and the New York Yacht Club American Magic teams that spent plenty of time locking horns. Slipping into third when the cut was made was the British Athena Pathway team. Ahead of the Youth America's Cup, there'd been a great deal of talk about the young Italian sailor Marco Gridoni. His performance alongside his then co-helmsman Ruggero Tita in Jeddah at the preliminary regatta had been outstanding, after getting to the final against Emirates Team New Zealand and almost beating them to the trophy. Now at the youth event, all eyes were on him and his new helmsman Gianluigi Ugolini. And while they didn't have it all their own way, it was clear that they were the benchmark team. Meanwhile, the American team fought hard to beat the British by just 1 point to make it into the final to face the Italians. And while helmsman Harry Melgiz and Kyle Navin and their crew put up a good fight, in the end victory went to the favourites as Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli won the Unicredit Youth America's Cup. The 5th of October was a huge day as the Puig Women's America's Cup got underway. Never before in the 173-year history of the Cup had there been an event aimed solely at women, and this was it, and its significance wasn't lost on anybody. But with so many accomplished female sailors, many of them coming from high-performance foiling boats, and now with a boat that didn't require the typically huge demands of a traditional cup boat, this was the time for things to change. As with the youth event, the women also had a full range of weather conditions, which made for some very close, nerve-wracking racing. As with the youth series, the Italians were often at the front of Group A, but in this case they had the British Athena Pathway team to deal with. Skippered by three-time Olympic medalist Hannah Mills, with her long-standing Olympic crew Saskia Clark also on board, this was a confident and sure-footed team from the off. So, after 6 qualification races, it was little surprise to see these two head into the semi-final, along with Emirates Team New Zealand. In Group B, it was the Swedish team, helmed by Vilma Bobeck and Julia Gross, that dominated, winning 5 of the 8 races. Behind them, it was Yayo Team Dutch Sail and the Spanish sail team Barcelona that went forward to the semi-finals. For the first 3 races of the semi-finals, it looked like a pattern had emerged, with the Italians and British consistently at the front of the fleet, with appearances from the Spanish, Swedes and Kiwis taking turns to join them. And while there was potential for a shake-up in the 4th and final race of this round, when 4 of the 6 boats were over the line at the start, including the British and the Italians, in the end it was these two that made it through to the match race final.
Holding this angle for a moment. I'm going to come up to this now.
Nice work, guys.
Holy smokes.
That was stressful.
If the beginning of the women's event had been big news, the 13th of October looks set to be an entry that would go into the history books, whatever the result. Because while this was the first day of the 37th America's Cup match, where Ineos Britannia would face the defenders Emirates Team New Zealand, it was also the final of the Puig Women's America's Cup. And this was no add-on either. In an ambitious move, the organisers had placed the final slap bang between the 2 opening cup races, which meant that all eyes were on this special race. From the start, there was very little between them, but the Italians squeezed out a tiny advantage early on, which they managed to keep for the first lap. And despite a risky-looking split between the 2 teams, at the end of the second and final lap, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli remained solid and held their lead to the finish to win the first ever Women's America's Cup by just 8 seconds.
Speechless. It's such an it's just an immense joy, really. We've worked so hard, and I don't know, yeah, with the boys helping us all the time. Yeah, we're so happy to match their win and be champions. I guess we cannot believe it.
This was such a deserved win. Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli were the standout team throughout this event, and their celebrations are well deserved. But this event was about much more than winning, and the fascinating thing is that all the teams knew it. They kept saying it all the way through. This is the future for the America's Cup. At least that's what a lot of people are hoping.
A sustainable future. Yanmar.